going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are back with more of our continued flashback to the Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch stories. We're here for story number 15. We're not even halfway through this one, folks. We're here for story number 15 with Nissa's Resolve by Kimberly Krynis, because this set is just full of just gifts for Amy.
Yes.
My quick review at the top for this one was, I thought this was great. I thought the depth for this story was awesome. Mm-hmm. Just very, very good. There was a fair bit of action as well, considering. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah. It's probably one of my favorite stories of Nissa. And she's my favorite, so...
There you go.
It's definitely one of the stories that made me love her.
Yeah, it's very good. It's just very good. You know, we do the little banter back and forth that Johnny's better than Nissa and Nissa's better than Johnny, whatever, but this was
better.
I was about to compliment her. But this is a very good story. Nissa or otherwise, it's just a very, very good story. But the reason that we bring up our quick reviews at the top, if you're new to the show, is because what we tend to do here is we always say that we review, we do not summarize. And so because of that, we encourage you to go read the story for yourself. And so we give our quick review to give you a general idea of what we think of it, so that if we're like, it's kind of trash, maybe just watch this review. But in this case, a very good one, and we encourage you to go check it out. And because it's an older story, if you don't exactly know where to find it, or you don't want to go mining through Wizard's website to try to find it, we've helped you out. The top link in the description down below, it will take you right to that story. And if you have the chance, you should read it. I don't even think it was that long. It was like a reasonable length.
Amount.
Yeah. So yeah, we encourage you to go do that before listening to our review. And then, of course, we would love it if you would come back and join in the discussion with us and listen to the review for yourself. Because, you know, whether we're spoiling things or not, it was great for us to go back and reread it, because I hadn't remembered a lot of this.
Right.
I remembered the very broad strokes, and by that I mean I remembered the 2 Planeswalker characters that were in the story. And that was kind of it. But that being said, onto the full review itself. We know from the last time that we saw Nissa, I don't know why I wrote this way in my notes. I just wrote, Nissa's off to see the flower, and it just like put me in a Wizard of Oz mindset. It was very weird. She's off to see the flower, the wonderful flower of Colney Heart. And so that's all on me, and I apologize. And that's for nobody but somebody who can see my dumb notes over here. Yeah, so Nissa is going to Colney Heart to try to get Zendikar back, but I don't think they told us in the last story that it was on Bala Ged.
They did not. This is where they told us.
Right, but it was just like stated very matter-of-factly of like, well, Nissa knows it's on Bala Ged, so she's got to go back home to Bala Ged. And it was like, if she knew that all along, why didn't we know that in the last story? But okay, sure, it wasn't really relevant until the beginning of this one, so...
Well, in the last story, going back to Colney Heart did not occur to her until it did in that story.
Towards the end, right? Like, towards right at the end, yeah.
She knew Colney Heart existed.
Sure.
Because she grew up in the town where it existed.
Well, yeah, no.
Or in the... area that it existed, the continent.
They called this a new bud of Colney Heart, so I don't know that that's true. That's why I'm saying, because like Nissa was like, oh, there's rumors that a new bud of it formed on Bala Ged, and it's like, first of all, where the hell did you hear those rumors?
Yeah.
And
who told you that? Because obviously no one who lives here now would know that information.
Because no one lives there now. Spoilers.
Yeah. No, I mean like no one on Zendikar told you that.
Yeah. So I don't fully get that. That may have been like a little bit of a like maybe we just don't get it. But that also may just have been a little bit of a hey, this is over here. I heard. Who'd you hear it from? Don't worry about it. Right. It's over here.
It's just been like a convenient drop that tidbit in.
rumors ex machina. Look, if that's it, then that's it. That's
I thought
fine.
that it meant that Conley Hart originally existed in Balaged, which is the reason why, as much as it is the reason why it occurred to Nissa, it's also the reason why it didn't originally occur to Nissa.
Because it was at her home and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
she had, put all of that out of her memory.
As we learned, or as was reiterated further in this story. I also found it kind of interesting that, because you picked up on this as well, but when Nissa first gets to Balaged, which, by the way, has been completely corrupted by the Eldrazi, completely, that description of what Balaged looked like was, heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Just flat, white in all directions, chalky, that's it.
There were trees there. It's not like chalky trees. They weren't there.
Nope, they had all disintegrated, all life had disintegrated, all hills, it seems like, had disintegrated. It was just a flat, white surface, which is crazy to me, because I don't know how that works, unless it got corrupted down to the rock, the bedrock or whatever, the rock underneath, because
I don't even know.
Neither do I. I don't understand how it would be completely flat. That just doesn't make sense to me. But
if the Eldrazi's shoved their tentacles down into the ground,
well, yeah, but I just mean
to steal more life from it, other than just what was the surface.
Right, but I'm saying the topography of Earth, of land, doesn't work that way. Because, we know the Eldrazi can corrupt rock. I get that. So that's not where I'm not understanding. What I'm not understanding is, if there are hills and mountains, right? Hills made of dirt, mountains made of rock, how do the Eldrazi go over both of those areas and consume them to the point of flatness? Is it just that they get down to sea level so that they don't have to worry about water encroaching on them because they don't like water?
Like I said, they might actually dig into it.
Right, but to what point? How do they decide where that flatness begins / ends?
If there's any bit left of it, I assume.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's just odd to me because again,
it's a little weird. It's
right,
a little weird.
It's very weird to me.
Pictures that we've seen and descriptions that we've heard have not been like that. They've been but it might just be that it was there was a tree there, and it got consumed by the Eldrazi and turned to chalkiness, and then the wind blew.
Oh yeah.
A fierce enough, fast enough amount that it just kind of turned to dust and blew away.
Sure, and that much is fine. And again, maybe it's nitpicky. That's really not in any way the meat and potatoes of this story, which we will definitely get to because I mentioned the depth of it, and it's definitely something to talk about. It was just something I thought of, but that Nissa gets to Conley Hart, and again, sorry, this was something that you picked up on, was the fact that she just gets to Conley Hart and she's like, wow. She gets to Balaged. Sorry, I'm mixing up my phrases here. She gets to Balaged and notices that it's just flat and white and fully corrupted and chalky and just gone. And she's like, wow, there is nothing left here. Sorry, except Conley Hart. There's nothing here except Conley Hart. And you went, ugh. It's
well, that sounds like she's leaving herself open to a lot of disappointment.
Just blind faith. No reason whatsoever to believe that it's still here. Just blind faith. Because not only is it blind faith, it's blind faith of this is what the continent looks like. But one, Conley Hart's definitely here. And two, I know it because I heard rumors that a new bud was here.
Right.
Come on. That's
the dumbest thing I ever
heard. So that was a thing.
She had to believe it still existed.
Yeah.
Because otherwise she wasn't going to get through.
Yeah, and there were a couple of moments in here where she was like, I'm I'm not leaving Balaged without Zendikar, right? Without getting Zendikar back. So
yeah, but all of those moments where she made those declarations of fact, basically, I was sitting there going, eee. We read this story before and I knew how it ended. I didn't really remember all of the pieces of it, but I remembered how it ended. but like still I was sitting there like cringing every time she did that, like thinking like it's not okay to do this to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not okay to just assume that it'll be there when you get there, because you'll get there, maybe. You might not even find it.
Right.
And if you do find it, who knows if it'll be alive by the time you get there.
Right. Well, and to start talking about the more in-depth stuff for this story and the deeper story aspects, Nissa was kind of hard on herself for a lot of this.
Yeah.
Whether, like, that unintentional, but just being like, well, it's definitely here, so I'm promising that I'm going to do this thing or I'm never leaving. And it's like you said, that's bad.
Right.
But also, she, a lot of times in this story, was like, kind of reminded, because it was home, right? It's where she used to live, and she's remembering, oh, this was my village, and this is where I used to hunt, and this is where and she's remembering back, and she's saying, well, that's who I was. I'm not that anymore.
Right.
And I left to no longer be that, so to try to be that again would be bad. I need to not do that.
Right.
And it's like, you're being very hard on yourself, first of all. But on the other hand, in a broad kind of strokes thing, there are absolutely real world allegories to that of like, you move on from a particular job or place, or you learn from your mistakes previously, and so you move on. You're like, I will never do that again. That I have left that life, I've left that world, I'm just not doing that anymore. I'm done doing that. And so you say to yourself, like, that was terrible. I don't ever want to think about it again. I don't ever want to do it again. I feel like you have more to say on this. So I want you to be able to. But I just, like, I can understand that wish, but I'd like to think that I would eventually come to the same conclusion that Nissa did, which we can talk about as we get there, but, you know.
Like, I guess to that, I'll just say, like, I thought it was interesting, like, the level of sort of muscle memory that she had, because the landscape was totally different.
Yeah, I picked
at
up
that
on that
point.
too. Absolutely.
You know, but she was able to understand her, like, coordinates almost enough to know, like, okay, going through here, I'm, you know, almost like she was seeing the landscape the way it originally was, but she wasn't. You know, her body was moving through it as if it was the same, but it was completely different. So it was at that point in no way like her logical mind that was doing that, but that was the point, right? To bring it back to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
The point was, when she lived there, when she did those things, she wasn't logical. And she got to a point where she could be logical, and now she doesn't want to go back.
Yeah. And she keeps talking about, like, the way she used to be, and, well, that's who I was, and the old me would have done it this way, or whatever. And when she, by the way, if you haven't read the story or you don't recall, she eventually finds out that Zendikar did not retreat into Colney Heart. It was ripped away and into Colney Heart because Ob Nixilis tore Colney Heart out of the ground and set it up in a ring of hedrons, trying to absorb its power for himself. Which, not a bad plan, considering. Ob Nixilis looked at the world and he was like, well, this place is screwed, so I'm going to absorb the entirety of the power of this world from Colney Heart, take it for myself. This place is dead anyway. And so, kind of doing the evil version of what the vampire asked Nissa to do, right? The vampire asked Nissa to take the seeds from the different continents, planeswalk away somewhere else, plant them so that Zendikar could live on elsewhere. And what Obnixilis was trying to do was just absorb Zendikar into himself, the plane dies, and then he planeswalks away and has the entirety of the power of Zendikar inside of him.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Because the power of Zendikar is greatly diminished by the fact that it's being eaten alive by the Eldrazi.
Sure.
So it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, I see how he would find it to be an easier opportunity for him to come and steal the power, but there's going to be a lot less of it.
Yeah. Well,
So
and yeah, and I mean,
like I could see him going like, oh, okay, yes, this world is screwed. Like, anyone who's still here isn't going to be pissed off at me showing up and stealing the power away from the planet because there's virtually none left anyway, and they're all running scared.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand, like, that being an opportunity to show up and try to take it, but I don't understand how he thinks he's going to gain that much power at that point when the place is already chalk.
Well, even if it's just, even if it's, I mean, he did, like, I don't remember the exact wording, but he said something to the effect of, like, I'd have more power than any planeswalker alive or whatever. So, like, even if it's not...
I feel like there's no way for him to actually determine that, though. Like, where is he pulling those numbers out of?
Because,
his ass?
well, because, like, all planeswalkers have relatively the same amount of power post-mending, right? Because they're not gods anymore, or not godlike beings anymore. So they're all, like, depending on their power set and how experienced they are with it, they're all relatively on par. I mean, Bolas is a lot stronger,
they have the same amount of power, but you're mentioning, you know, like, somebody like Nahiri has, like, a vast amount of knowledge compared to somebody who just became a planeswalker and doesn't know what's up.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, yes, technically they have the same amount of power post-mending, but, like, not really, you know?
Sure. Yeah, well, and so maybe it's a little bit more, but enough to push him. He knows it's enough to push him over the edge. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't know how he knows or how he doesn't know. That's just it.
And I guess if he thinks that he can take it and connect it to the Hedrons and, like, do a whole, like, thing with it, then he can, like, harness the power that it still has left and, like, make that power grow. I mean, it's a flower. I don't know if he was gonna, like, replant the flower in any way.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Other than just, like, scoop up whatever power was left in it. But maybe he was going to do something to magnify that amount of power.
Yeah,
in some way, with the Hedrons and or with moving the whole assembly to an area where he could plant the flower again and make it, again, exponentially, like, become more powerful.
Okay.
I don't know. That just would have made a lot more sense to me than thinking that there was that much left to it for him to just take.
Okay. I mean, they didn't go enough into the discussion of it. That was definitely not. Unfortunately, it was definitely not the focus. Like, we, you know, just trying to parse out what he was trying to do, because it was just a, hey, I'm a bad guy. Oh God, you beat me. Okay, bye. You know, like, you know, I'll see you later, and we will see him later. Spoilers. During this set of reviews, we do see him one more time. So at least. So well, maybe he describes it further the next time we see him. I don't recall that, but we shall see. But regardless, when Nissa is fighting Obnixilis, at one point, she starts to tap into those reserves of power that she has, and she's like, okay, I feel it. Like, she had felt it at one point when she killed an Eldrazi. She was like, oh, I feel this again, but I'm not that elf anymore, right? And pushes it off. And when she's fighting Obnixilis, she realizes, okay, this is not something that I can just do. Like, I can't just take him down. It's not as easy. Even with her, like, jujitsu-like abilities of, like, he's bigger than me, but I know how to use his weight and his strength against him, even though I'm smaller. So like that kind of aspect of fighting, I think that's jujitsu. I'm not, if anyone was curious, I am not a martial arts expert of any kind, but I believe that's jujitsu. I could be wrong. But regardless, that using your opponent's weight against them, that she's very skilled at that. She talked about the Bailoffs and doing it with Obnixilis, but she still ended up needing to tap into some of the power. And she kind of tells herself, because anyone who has impulse control problems definitely has never been in this situation before, of just saying like, I'll just do a little bit. I'll just have a little bit of this power, but I'm not going to do it a lot because I don't need a lot. So I'll just do a little. I don't want to do it ever again, but I just need a little bit right now. And so she does a little bit, she uses a little bit, and then kind of catches herself later on just being like, oh, well, I have all this power. I could just, oh, right, I'm not doing that anymore. Even though I just used it, I'm not going to use it again.
Right.
But it allows her to realize, I'm not that person anymore. I said I was going to do a little, but I'm not that anymore. I don't need it. But it allowed her to realize that she, as like I said earlier, as I would hope I would realize as well, if thinking that way, that we are each creatures of our own past and present. That the things that happened to you in the past, whether they sucked, whether they were amazing, or whether they were anywhere in between, they color who you are today. And you can change because of those things, for better or for worse, but ignoring them completely is not correct and or is not necessarily healthy and okay. Because you can only run away for so long, kind of a thing, until it catches up to you. And that's something that she comes to the realization of during her fight with Obnixilis, and just says, you know what? It's not that I'm not that elf anymore and I'm a different elf now. It's that I'm both. I'm who I was, but who I am now. I'm who I was with the experiences that I've had in between. I don't know if you wanted to. I kind of went off on that one. It's just something that I like. I thought about that a lot when we were reading this. It like really hit me, so I apologize. Feel free to. No, nothing? Did I take it all? Okay. So, and then the third and final point, which Amy and I talked before we started about this, and I wanted you to be able to say to everyone what you said to me, because the third and final point with Nissa and Obnixilis was Nissa breaks through the Hedron field, through where Obnixilis had been blocking her the whole time, and was able to get to Colony Heart, and picks it up, and is like, I've got it. And then Ob shows up and grabs her hands, and he's like, you did the wrong thing, and starts stealing her life force from her. And he's like, you want this, but I want it more, and I'm going to take it. He doesn't say this, but because he's more powerful than she is. He just, feels that way. He says it. And he's kind of lifting her up into the air by her hands, and he's holding Colony Heart. And she thinks to herself, I'm going to absorb the strength of Colony Heart into myself so that I can be powerful enough to beat this guy back. And then she stops and says, no, I'm not going to do that, because that's not the best choice. The best choice is to take what little life force I have left before Ob strips it all away and push it into Zendikar and give it back. But what I was saying to Amy is there's the concept of like, I'm not who I was. I'm only who I am now. No, that's wrong. I am both. And then in the end, kind of giving of herself. I struggled with trying to find the proper through line between all of those points to connect them together. Because I feel like it should be there, and I should have that like puzzle, that last puzzle piece slips in and you can see the whole picture and you're like, holy crap, that's great. And I feel like I just missed it. And so I asked Amy, because I was like, am I dumb? Or like, is it like missing? Did it like just miss the mark? And so I wanted to give you the chance.
Well, and I said they didn't make that connection for you because they wanted you to make that connection yourself. And I shouldn't say they, because it was Kimberly Kreiness. But you know, you made the point of like, so she used to be selfish, and she's trying not to be selfish now, and she's not selfish anymore. But then when she is holding Colney Hart but needs to be Ob Nixilis, she's selfish again, and then deciding not to be. And I was like, no. Before, she had no awareness of her surroundings, of the importance of them, of possibly how her actions affected other people and things. She doesn't really go into the details of the aspects of what made her who she was, who she decided not to be anymore. But she was young and stupid and did stupid shit, because young people do, because of the lack of awareness that she had. Then she gained that awareness by having the planet say, I'm communicating with you now, and I'm your friend and respecting you. And so she gained that respect back for the planet, as well as like an understanding of just the connection that everything has to everything else. And so being in that situation, you know, she was able to say, in the past, I've taken this power from you. You know, you gave it to me willingly, perhaps, but I took this power from you to make myself more powerful so I could affect things, right? Fight Eldrazi or whatever it was.
Right.
You know, fight bad guys. But right now, I can reciprocate that by giving you my power, because right now, you need power just to survive. You need whatever you can get at this point. And the reason why I'm here is because I need to foster what you have left as much as possible.
Right.
So I'll feed into that as much as I can and hope that it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting too, because I mean, she could have just absorbed Colney Hart, used it to beat Ob Nixilis, but that's temporary, right? She could have used that power right then and there and stopped this threat, but what about the next one?
Right.
And what if she's not there or whatever?
Well, and Nixilis's point was, I mean, this place is screwed. The Eldrazi have already destroyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they have. But this flower was left. Colney Hart was left. And it seems like Ob Nixilis like sees that it is a power source. I don't know if he equates it to being the soul of Zendikar.
I'm not sure how much he knows about that.
Or if he does equate it to that, he just doesn't give a shit.
Right.
But like Nissa being able to find it, like she found it, it exists. She sees that it's been uprooted. She knows that the reason why she was ripped away from the world, ripped away from Ashaya, is because the roots were ripped out of the ground.
Yeah.
She was able to make those precise correlations. And so she knows I can't take the power from this because this is what's left. Taking the power from this means all of this was for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so instead, in giving her of herself back to Zendikar, back to Khalni Heart is able to reroot itself, even here on Balaged, and be back to
and,
full power.
Shove itself back into the ground, essentially.
Yeah, fully so covered up and everything, and beat Nixilis by itself.
And go down deep enough so that when Nixilis starts to dig for it, it's not there.
Yeah, with his horrific fingernails or whatever the phrase was, which was awesome. And so,
claws or whatever.
Yeah, and then it ends with Nissa and Ashaya finally reunited as it should be, and making their way back to Gideon's group to fight Ulamog. And so it's exactly as we said at the end of last week's JaAR, with Kiora going off with her group to join Gideon and fight Ulamog at Seagate. It's all these groups converging together at this center point, and it's the story team letting you know at the end of each of these stories, hey, by the way, stay tuned, it's coming soon, right? All these people are going to converge, and then there's going to be a fight or a battle for Zendikar.
Right. Well, and that's why it had to be Seagate as well, because it couldn't just be some random place. It couldn't just be, oh, well, we heard the rumors that if we go in this boat, we can go to that other place and it's going to be better there.
Yeah.
Seagate was the fortified area.
Right.
It was the... And so that makes it the place that people will think of to go to when they're all converging from every fucking place else.
Yeah.
That's the place they'll go. And that's the place that they'll be able to use as the battleground against these Eldrazi or whatever.
Well, and that's why Gideon says that even at that point, from however many stories back. It's been a few weeks at this point, but since we reviewed it. But that's what Gideon says. He says, you know what? If this is such a beacon of hope, why abandon it? Have this be the area that we hold, and that we say this will be where our final stand is, because it's that spot that so many people associate with that. So yeah.
But even if it wasn't associated with hope, it would be enough of a landmark and enough of a sort of military type location.
Sure.
Because it was fortified like that,
Mm-hmm.
and man-made and built up.
Yeah.
That is what would make it the logical destination in people's minds.
Right.
So even after it fell, once there's nothing else there for the Eldrazi to consume and they move on, going back there makes perfect sense. To have that place be yet again the location for something like that.
Right. And then two other broad points I wanted to make about the story that I found interesting, just thinking about it, at the end after we were done reading about it. I think this is the first story of these 15 now that have been set primarily on Zendikar, where we don't have the main characters or the characters who the story is focusing on run into any survivors.
Right.
In fact, the only other life that Nissa finds besides Khalni Heart and Nixilis is one lone Eldrazi that she kills, and that's it. That's it. And you made a very good point, because I was like, oh, that's really interesting that I found that. And you were like, yeah, look at where she is.
Right. And it was supposed to be such a testament to the fact that, this place was so fucking dead. But, her beacon of hope was the one Eldrazi, you know? Finding this Eldrazi gives me hope, because I know that means there's some bit of life left for it to consume.
Right.
Otherwise, it would already be gone.
Right, and it had deviated from its path to come at her. She took it down and then just followed its trail back. But it really does show, just that tiny little aspect of, Every single other story has had one form or another of the main character meets a group of survivors. And this is the first story where that's not the case, and it's because of where this story is set. And so sure, you can give all the descriptions you want of what the continent looks like, and what the Eldrazi have done to it, and how that makes Nissa feel, but even without doing any of those things, you still showed us that story. Instead of told us that, you showed us that by the fact that it's the first story so far in this whole set where there has not been a single survivor found, because there are no survivors to be found.
Well, and they needed to make the stakes higher. You know, it needed to make that much of a difference. It needed to not be Nissa shows up on Bala Ged and Bala Ged looks the same as it did when she lived there, and oh, it's this beautiful area. Let's try and siphon everybody over here to Bala Ged.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, Conley Hart has made it prosperous. You know,
yeah.
That was not going to be a good story. It makes so much more sense for her to show up there, see it a fucking desolate wasteland, and then realize that if she actually looks and is able to find Conley Hart, she might actually be able to save Zendikar.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it was important thematically. You know, it's partially because of where it was located, but, you know, the plot and the theme wouldn't have made sense if she had found other survivors. Because the survivor is Conley Hart.
Right.
And it's the sole survivor, and it's the important survivor, so any other survivors wouldn't have mattered to the story.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, very good point. It's just, you know, I just enjoyed that the setting could be shown to us as well as told to us in that way. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, just in general, something that I thought of at this point. I mean, there are many more stories left for Battle for Zendikar. I don't want to say many. There are a number of stories left for Battle for Zendikar, but something that I noted that for this one, if you look back over the 15 stories that we've read so far, there have been a couple of Kiora stories, a couple of Jace stories. There have been, there was like a Drana story. So like, you know, there's been a mix of different characters in here. Gideon has had a number of them, but Nissa has had a ton. Mm-hmm. And yet, if you look at the promotional materials for this set is centered around which Planeswalker? Gideon. The pictures on the booster boxes and the posters and all the promo material, if I recall correctly, I mean, it was 6 years ago now, but pretty sure it was all Gideon. Like, Nissa was a card in the set, sure, but at least I believe she was.
But they didn't put her face all over everything.
And so we were talking about that. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, my point was just that Nissa doesn't make money. Looking for merchandise of any kind, either from the actual Wizards website or from other locations like on Amazon or whatever, through Walmart or
Hot Topic or whatever might happen to have stuff. Sure.
Different stores, whatever.
Yeah.
They never have Nissa merchandise. Even merchandise that depicts a number of planeswalkers. It's like Liliana, Jace, Garruk, even. Chandra, Ajani, Teferi. I even found a Kaya shirt, which was really cool. But nothing with Nissa on it, so...
Well, and unfortunately, especially these days, because following War of the Spark, or following Dominaria, really? Was it Dominaria? Yeah, it was Dominaria, where she was like, okay, bye. Like, except for Zendikar Rising, like, between Dominaria and now, there was not, like, she left the Gatewatch, she was on War of the Spark, but only kind of. She was, but she was somewhat more heavily featured in Zendikar Rising, except as you mentioned, Jace had to kind of show up to save the day, so like that was kind of messed up as well. So I found it odd. It was something I wanted to point out. Amy makes a good point. Look, whether it's correct or not, obviously we have no inside information, but like it seems to me like what I was saying in response to you bringing up that point was, it seems like Wizards did those surveys that they do, right? And they asked like, who's your favorite planeswalker? And like the one mentioned the least was Nissa. And so they were like, okay, well, we need another green female planeswalker, Vivian Reed. Let's stop focusing on Nissa because people don't like her as much. Like, that's just what it feels like to me. Like I said, no inside info here, no information that I'm aware of that's been passed out to say like, hey, we did this, we asked in terms of, setting up this, like a survey. I literally just said the word and I couldn't think of it again. But we set up this survey and we asked, and Nissa got the least number of votes, so we're going to try to, instead of changing her character, which will upset longtime fans, let's just make another one. Let's make another female green, like, nature-loving planeswalker and in Vivian, and hope that her story catches more people's eyes, I guess, or hearts.
They didn't. I mean, the point is, in my mind, that they don't need a survey for that. It's pretty easy for me to tell Nissa's not going to make a ton of money. Because the people who identify with Nissa are people who don't frivolously spend money. Because they don't need material things to give them fulfillment. Because that's not who Nissa is. So.
Yeah.
Vivian worked because she loves animals, and everybody loves animals.
Well, and they can make a lot of different cards of like, she shoots an arrow and it's a bear. She shoots an arrow and it's a wolf. It's an eagle. It's an owl. So they can make a lot of different cards of like spectral animals to focus that around. So yeah.
So people like Vivian because they're like, oh my god, I love animals. But when somebody loves the planet, it's not as sexy.
Unless they're Captain Planet.
He's not sexy, he's just a hero.
Is he going to take pollution down to 0?
No. That's a far-off goal that he will never reach.
He did not succeed at that, no. But that's all right, he's got heart. And so that's definitely going to be the end of this episode.
Oh, no.
Once we start getting dumb, that's when you're like, okay, no, time to go.
Yeah, it's like the punchiness has begun.
So I hope everybody enjoyed. As always, if you are new or if you're unaware, we want to hear your opinions on anything that we just talked about. Whether it's that, Nissa is the anti-capitalist planeswalker, or whether you want to give us your...
Corporation can't make money on a character that doesn't like corporations. Just saying.
Or whether you want to give us thoughts on the actual in-depth analysis of the story itself. Any and all thoughts that you might have, we would love to hear them, because, hey, equating Nissa to an anti-capitalist figure, that's a great way for Amy to show off her...
Hashtag worthless pride.
And I want to know...
Hashtag Nissa pride.
I want to know your thoughts as well. Is there a better anti-capitalist figure among the Planeswalkers than Nissa? Because I can't think of one.
There's not a better Planeswalker.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, any and all thoughts that you might have, show off your hashtag worthless pride. Down in the comments below, that's what they're for. You can check out our socials and stuff. Check the description down below. It's got links to our other channels as well, links to our socials. You should check all those out. Don't forget, while you're here, to subscribe and ring that bell so that you will get notifications whenever any of our videos come out and whenever we go live. If you're into Magic the Gathering, we play MTG Arena every Monday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, right here live on this channel.
Check it out.
We tweet and Facebook about it, so if you check out our socials, but also it's every Monday, 8 to 10 p.m., and then every Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, also here on this channel, we play assorted video games. And this Friday, we will be continuing our playthrough of the story mode, or the dragon mode or something, of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. We started it this past Friday. We will continue it this Friday.
Apparently there's a lot more left.
A lot more. I got the hang of it this past week, so it should be faster. But if you like watching someone die in fighting games and get progressively saltier about it, boy, do I have the stream for you. So tune in this Friday night.
The other ones were just so much simpler, like the older ones of those games. Were just
we finished them in one stream, and this was only like a quarter of it, maybe? Who knows?
It's really a testament to like how they were able to technologically advance these games, because you're moving around in this three-dimensional space now, which gives you all these options.
For better or worse.
Right, exactly.
So tune in, like I said, tune in next week, or tune in Friday for that. If you missed it, like if you're watching this after the day after this video goes live, the VOD of that stream, if it's something you're interested in, will be up on Video Games for All. As I said, you should check that description down below, because I think you'll really enjoy it. Also, we'll be back next week.
The bells.
Yeah, always. Subscribing, ringing the bells. Don't forget to like and share. Those help a lot as well if you're unaware of how the YouTube algorithm works and what it demands of us, because it does.
Which is too much.
Yeah, get those clicks, get that engagement.
It demands too much.
Yeah, we release 8 pieces of content a week. What more do you want, YouTube?
Yes,
anyway.
There's a lot there. There's a lot to consume.
Yes. So,
ceaseless hunger.
Yeah. We will be back next week with a continuation of this series, so we encourage you to subscribe and ring the bell so that we'll see you next week. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. We would love to hear your thoughts as always. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.